Happy Monday, everybody. Let's raid my lab. I hope you're having a good Monday. I am super excited to talk to you about RFID. RFID is just one of the coolest technologies. As a maker, a lot of times we geek out over things, but then other people look at it and they don't necessarily understand what's going on. But there's something that's just really magical about taking a little thing and putting it in front of something and have it magically beep and wirelessly transmit a serial number through the air. And so it's just a really cool technology essentially, and this is a very oversimplification, but this thing puts out a power and signal, and this chip has no battery. It just has a coil inside of it and a little tiny chip, and when this thing receives power through the air, almost like your wireless charging on your phone, it excites this chip, and this chip will send the serial number back where it can be read by this. And it feels like magic, it seems like magic, and it's very, very cool. So in the makerspace, there are two frequencies of RFID. There's three primary ones, but there's the 13 megahertz one, which is the one that comes with most of your RFID kits. And then there's the 125 kilohertz one. And I tend to like the 125 kilohertz a little bit better. I feel like they just seem to work a little bit more reliably, but this is the one a lot of people have. If you find these tags, the easiest way to tell the difference is that normally the 13 megahertz ones don't have a serial number written on them, but if you look at the back of this one, there'll actually be a serial number on there that is the serial number on the chip. So that's what I've tended to notice. These things, you'll see these called EM 4100 or some form of 4100, 4200 type chips, and so these are my preference, but they're both good. So most likely your first interaction with RFID in the maker world was getting this in a kit, and this board is fine, and I do have one beef with it. So many companies put this thing in a kit, and it will be the only thing in the entire kit that does not have a header pin soldered on it. And I guess the way I feel about that is, it's not that I don't think people should learn how to solder, but RFID is one of the coolest things possible, and people come in and they want to use it, and all of a sudden, like, there's no, they have to go find a soldering iron and learn how to solder just to use this thing, which is one of the things I appreciate about those last kits I gave away. They actually have pre-soldered header pins on there. So most of you got something like this. It's a little kit with the reader and one of these plastic cards and one of these tags, all bundled in a nice little kit. And so you hook it up and you send it to your Arduino, and when you, generally the first exercise is this card won't work, but this one will, and the whole point of that is to prove that you're able to determine which number is right and which one isn't. So that's kind of what everybody's first foray into RFID is. And then my thing is, I really like these. These are the 125 megahertz, 125 kilohertz readers, and they have this little external antenna, and I just tend to like them a little bit better. I find them to be a little bit more reliable. One of the things you may not know about RFID is that it sort of broadcasts on a plane. So unless you have a dipole or a multi-pole RFID reader, then actually putting it perpendicular like this, it most likely isn't going to read, or isn't going to read well. It expects that it expects to be on the same plane as the facing the reader. It won't work like this most of the time. So to look at it, so we have these readers. These are your typical, this is called a RDM 6300, and you'll see a lot of different versions, 6300, 630, stuff like that. But these are the 125 megahertz ones. These are the 125 kilohertz, 13 megahertz. And then in terms of the tags, most people have had these kind of cards, and they work really well. I buy some of these things. These are silicone wristbands that basically have a chip in them. In fact, I don't have a chip, so we're gonna do some exploratory surgery here. Let's see here. We're gonna try to take this thing apart. That's in there. Let's give it another shot. So, yeah, so inside there is this little black thing that is essentially what would be fitting in here. And that is in every single one of these little wristbands. And that's your RFID tag. So this is 125 kilohertz. These are nice little adjustable watch style. They're about $1 a piece. There's also silicone band styles. Both of them, I've found both of them pretty comfortable to wear. There's also the event style where this is, you can buy these for about 10 cents each with the chip in them already. And so these are really nice for events where you don't want people to take their band off. These, like I said, the cards are typical. You can also buy these key tags. And there's another one that I usually have with me, but I'm just out of them, and they're those stickers. So they have stickers that are RFID tags. So it's all really, really cool stuff. The way I use them most is actually with this USB reader. And so I think what I want to do is I want to go over to the computer and I want to show you a little bit about how I use these and kind of what I do with them. Now, the best way to show you what this USB RFID reader is doing is actually just go into Notepad. When you plug it in, this thing emulates a keyboard. So as far as your computer is concerned, this thing is a keyboard. There's no drivers, there's nothing to install. It works on Raspberry Pis and Linux and Mac and Windows and all that kind of stuff. You just plug it in and it goes. But so what we're going to do, we are going to just make sure the cursor is somewhere on the page, and I'm going to take my blue silicone RFID band and tap it on there, and you'll see that it immediately spits out the serial number, and that's cool. So you have the serial number that's on there. I'll take the red one. But the thing that makes that even more cool is that it's actually going down to the next line when you're done. And so that really does some magical things. And so a perfect example is if you come over here and let's say this is a kiosk. So I'm just going to hit F11 to make it full screen. And this is a kiosk. There is no keyboard hooked up to this thing other than the RFID scanner. What you can do in HTML, you can tell it to autofocus on this one input line, and then you actually put a submit button here that could even be hidden, but nobody is ever going to see, or nobody's ever going to touch this submit button, because I can come in and I can scan it, and when I scan it, it's going to put the number in and hit enter, which will essentially submit the form. So, all right, person 1 scanned their badge. Now by person 2 scanning it, they're agreeing that the argument settler will make the decision. So I push it down there, and it said the winner is Kimberly Hoover. And, you know, so as always, my wife wins the arguments. And I just love the idea that with basically no keyboard, you can have, and this will be random. She won again. I'm giving up for the day. You can have no keyboard and make this interactive RFID thing with any of your web development projects. And then from there, you can send it on to Node-RED, you can send it to the database, you can retrieve information, stuff like that. Now, one thing to consider with RFID is that the information on the chip is readable by basically anybody. So, you know, I wouldn't consider that serial number any kind of secret. And so let's say you had something important. Let's say you have a little gift shop and the kids have RFID tags or whatever. So theoretically, somebody could use a smartphone to read the number, and they could come in here and just start punching in that RFID tag. So there's another thing you can do. You can, so right now I'm going to scan my tag, and the transaction will fail because it didn't find that number. So I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to do 325 again. And what you can actually do, and this is just a little bit of a hack, but if you think of the term two-factor authentication, normally what that means is that it is something you have, like the RFID tag or your phone or something like that, and something you know, which is a password. So something you have plus something you know equals two factors. And then when you get into biometric, it's something you have plus something you know plus something you are. So the idea with this is what you could actually do is you could have the person input a PIN. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4 for my PIN, and then I'm going to scan this. And now all of a sudden Dan was charged $3.25. My new balance is $46.75. And so the idea of basically using something like two inputs or two ways of inputting in the same field, you can create a two-factor authentication with RFID. And so there's a lot of fun uses for this, and there's just so many different things you can do. I would love to hear how you guys use RFID in the comments. I want to hear what you're doing. Share your projects, share your videos in the comments, and tell me what you're doing. Thanks for watching.